At this point, it seems like Forza has the upper hand in terms of popularity within the racing genre over Gran Turismo because a lot of you guys know that the last Gran Turismo game that came out last year, Gran Turismo 7, people had such high hopes for that game and high expectations, and they were really upset with what they got because it felt not only underwhelming, but the inclusions of microtransactions basically weighed the quality of the game down because the last thing people want to do is pay more for a game that they already paid for in the form of loot boxes and all that other stuff. But yeah, this was never always the case because Gran Turismo has been around since the late 90s, and the late 90s and early 2000s was probably like the golden era of, I guess, Gran Turismo games. And don't get me wrong, we got some good installments in the past decade with Gran Turismo 6 and Gran Turismo Sport. Gran Turismo Sport was okay, and it was something new because I believe there was some VR gameplay that people could experience if they had purchased that title. But for the most part, it does feel like the Forza series has been more exciting in comparison to Gran Turismo. And the thing is, if the Gran Turismo series had declined in popularity during the 2000s due to competition from other racing franchises, whether it be Need for Speed, whether it be Midnight Club, whether it be Burnout, Test Drive, you pretty much name it. That would have been one thing, but it seems like during the teens decade, the racing genre is not as popular as it was during the 2000s. And I think it's at the point now where even though Gran Turismo is pretty much it's probably the biggest name or the biggest franchise within the racing genre, and it's been that way for the past 20 years. I feel like over time, maybe it's gotten stale, and a lot of people are going on record and saying that maybe the series' best day is behind it. Because, when you look at Gran Turismo, for the most part, it seems like Sony just puts out, major installments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You don't see too many, Gran Turismo spin-off games or anything like that. And some people feel like, that's a direction that Sony should probably explore, or that's something that they should consider doing in the future because it seemed like the main series is just not what it used to be. And I do feel like a heavy emphasis on realism is part of the reason why, mechanics such as weather and stuff like that, all that stuff is pretty cool and just the look and all that. But the thing is, I think the problem with Gran Turismo is that it feels too much it feels less like a video game. It feels more like real life simulation, and honestly, I do feel that that's something that, young adults probably look at and they think, something, this is kind of boring and it's not too different from what I do in real life in terms of driving. But yeah, it's just that, I do feel like there's been more variety with Forza, with the Forza series in general, whether it be Forza Motorsport or Forza Horizon. And I do feel like, Xbox Studios, or Xbox Game Studios, they've been doing a good job at producing, Forza games and all that stuff. We're supposed to be getting a Forza Horizon 6 sometime in the future because I believe it was reported sometime last year that Forza Horizon 6 was currently in development, but I believe Forza Horizon 5 came out in 2021, so it might be a little while before we see that. I would probably say 2024 or 2025 we might see Forza Horizon 6, but as it currently stands, I do feel that Gran Turismo 7 was really a disappointment. I know I've said this in previous videos and all that stuff, but I don't know. I wouldn't say overall in the grand scheme of things that Forza is just flat out better than Gran Turismo, okay? It's just that the Gran Turismo series in general is just past its prime, and I feel like people are now gravitating to something new, because you look at some of these racing series, you look at Gran Turismo, you look at Need for Speed, and that series has been past its prime since like the mid 2000s. A lot of people think that Need for Speed series peaked when the Underground games came out. I believe it was between '03 and '04, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and then you had other Need for Speed games like Pro Street, which don't get talked about as much anymore. And that was probably like the last like really decent Need for Speed game in relation to the 2000s decade. Now, in relation to the teens decade, it's been pretty much hit and miss with Need for Speed. You had Rivals, you had Payback. You had the Need for Speed game from 2012. A lot of people would go on record and say that Need for Speed is not what it used to be, but at the same time, like the visual designs and all that stuff for those games look very impressive. Now, as far as the latest Need for Speed game is concerned, Need for Speed Unbound, I don't know. I was kind of embarrassed because a lot of people thought, they thought, EA could have done much better than that. And maybe they just didn't care and they just had a deadline they had to fill, and it was just like, yeah, we just got to get this game done, whatever. But, even like the Need for Speed series is not what it used to be. And I don't think at any point in time Need for Speed was ever, better than Gran Turismo. You have all kinds of games like within the racing genre that stand the test of time to this day, like Race Driver Grid. You have the Burnout series, which I honestly wish would be brought back sometime in the future, but I don't think it's going to happen. You have all kinds of racing titles from back in the day that stand the test of time right now. And aside from, I guess, the Forza series, like at this point, I would say the Formula One, video game racing series is, more exciting and entertaining than Gran Turismo at this point. I think that basically, I don't know, maybe the Gran Turismo series probably have to go on a hiatus and really come up with something or go in a new direction to try and appeal to casuals like they once did, because you got to remember, Gran Turismo started during a time period where gaming was evolving, like when the first Gran Turismo game came out, it was back in 97. That's back when just 3D games in general was like starting to become better. Everybody, was a huge fan of like PlayStation, even more so back then than nowadays, depending on who you ask. I just think, it's just, I don't know. Gran Turismo is just not what it used to be. And that's not to say that, it's completely, rotten right now. That's not necessarily the case. I just feel that, Sony may have been a little too greedy with Gran Turismo 7. They may have, did things that they look back now and it was like, they regret doing that. They definitely have put out like a lot of good racing games in general. And honestly, I feel like without Gran Turismo, there probably wouldn't be like a Forza series, because I think Forza was mainly designed to compete with the Gran Turismo series for the most part, opposed to simply just being a, Xbox's like exclusive, I guess, racing brand or what have you. So I do feel that the Forza franchise has definitely come a long way in over the past like 15 years or so. And right now, they're probably number one in terms of popularity, because it seems like everybody's talking about like Forza Horizon 6 opposed to when Gran Turismo 8 is going to come out in the future.